So let's talk today about what we're actually going to go through in this workshop. We're going to talk about being able to create a tea table, and I'm going to teach you today how important that is in regards to really matching your skills to what the job description and the employer is asking for. So we're going to break that down. We're also going to talk about three different advantages or more of networking. Networking is still the quickest and fastest way to get a job. I'm also going to talk to you about understanding when and why it's important to leave off some experience. Do your qualifications go beyond what the company is looking for? Are you accidentally misrepresenting yourself? I'm going to talk to you also about the pitfalls to being called overqualified and what does that actually mean? And then also, I'm going to talk to you about keeping the momentum for job search going. Looking for a job is a job, and we're going to talk about how to keep that so that you can continue to keep looking as opposed to getting discouraged. Okay, so first thing I'd like to do is I want to, if you haven't already, use the chat. I want you to practice. So we are going to talk about some good news. And I would like to have you just put in one word in the chat how your job search has been going so far. Please don't use any words that you wouldn't use at a professional interview. But Sheila, I would like for you to turn your camera on for a minute and just tell me what some of the comments are.
Sure. We have struggling, challenging, frustrating, slow, interesting, disheartening, educational, plodding along, horrific,
Okay.
challenging.
So yes, a lot of you guys are saying it's challenging, struggling, frustrating, disheartening. I am really hoping that by the end of this workshop, you're going to feel a lot better about looking for a job and also about what to say to some of these employers when they're interviewing you, as well as your resume. We're going to touch briefly on what does your resume look like and what should it look like. So there's something that Harvard Business Review is saying right now that we, who I call us seasoned employees, are very valued. And what's happened is that the employers are actually taking a second look at us. And the reason they're doing that is it's all based off of supply and demand. Second off, we are advocating for you. So when I'm talking to an employer, I'm asking them straight up, have you considered hiring people who are age 50 or older? Oftentimes, if they say, I've kind of left that group out, I will drill down on them more and say, why are you doing that? And then the second thing is that employers are not able to find people to work anymore. So even if they are hiring younger people, that doesn't mean that the younger generation is even staying. So what we are valued at is one, being adaptable. Two, the knowledge and the wisdom that we have, we paid a very high price for. I always say that you can say that at the interview. The wisdom and the knowledge I have, I paid a high price for, and in turn, I believe I can make you a lot of money, and I'll make some money too. We're also known as being dependable, punctual, men and women of our word. We show up on time. Whereas a lot of the other age groups are not necessarily doing that anymore. Another thing that's really important is I want to ask you what has changed since you last looked for work. Now, I don't expect you to answer this, but I do want you to think about this a minute. Are you actually matching your skills to the skills that are listed on the job description? Or are you actually putting too much information on there? Are you networking? One of the things I find with people after they've been unemployed for a little while, they start to get discouraged. I asked earlier about how the job search is going. I would have to say that if you read the chat, most of them were negative comments because it is enduring, it is difficult. It's hard to keep that momentum going. But I want you to lift your head up, throw your shoulders back, and everybody that you run into, I want you to say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you know of anybody that's hiring? We're going to get more into this on why this is so important. Another piece that has really changed is what we're doing right now, teleconferencing. Originally Sheila and I would give these workshops in person. Well, when the pandemic hit, we were forced to make some drastic changes. And it was difficult in the beginning because we didn't know for sure what we were doing even. But as we got to doing more teleconferencing, the better we got at it. That is part of the reason why I have you just write a word in the chat. Many of you have never used chat or never even attended a workshop live like this. You might have watched one on YouTube, but this is a little bit different than YouTube because I'm hoping I can answer your questions immediately. And also, this is live. We are real live people doing this workshop. So that has changed too. And how you're going to find it change personally for you is in the interviewing. So a lot of that they interview anymore is through teleconferencing. And more importantly, what has changed since you last looked for work is you. Now, we're not used to talking about I am. So I am punctual, I am dependable, I am a woman of my word. But at the interview is when you must talk that way. Now, I want you to stop and think, okay, since I was working last, what have I actually done to improve some of my skills? There are many, many things that you've done, but it's easy not to look at them as skills. It's easy just to say, well, everybody's doing that. When I want to tell you no, and let me give you just a quick example about this. So one of the things that may have changed are your expectations. Another thing that may have changed is that maybe you were at home taking care of a loved one the last year, and that was the reason that you weren't working. Well, it's easy to say, okay, so I was taking care of a loved one. I didn't advance or didn't hone in on any more additional skills. Well, I want to remind you that taking care of a loved one has an awful lot of skills built right in that. That could be where you're even setting up appointments, taking them to the doctor, feeding, medicine applications or administration. There's a lot of different skills that are built in there. Now, if you're struggling with what your skills are and how you have changed, reach out to us because we can help walk you through that too. Now, I had mentioned the T table, and what I want to encourage you to do is, for one, when you get the follow-up email tomorrow, take a look at this screen again. And I want you to actually get out a blank piece of paper and write a T on it. Okay. Now, what we've done here is we have taken a artificial job description or job listing, and we've pulled off some information off of that job listing. And we put 3 bullets here. So recruiting team members, experience as human resources, and worked in various departments. Then, as you can see on the right-hand side, I have listed my skills on what the company's looking for. Now, if you also can add, I always say if you can add in numbers or percentages, that's even better. So the story that you are telling me when I am interviewing you, you are actually the director of the story in my head. So when I'm looking at your resume, are you lining up with what I'm looking for? You could also use the same technique for your cover letter. You can use a T cover letter, which shows this is what you're looking for and this is how I'm qualified. I want to get back to the numbers really quick. So it says on the right-hand side, exceeded all recruitment goals by attending job fairs. I also want you, if you can say, in addition to that, we hired 5 new people, or if you could say it raised our sales by 20% or raised our sales by $1,000 a week. Any clarification that you can give and by adding more numbers makes that story easier for me to follow. And then it also gives you credit for what you've done. It's also very, very important to learn about how can I figure out just by looking at your resume how old you are. So, a lot of times years ago when we would do resumes, we were taught to do one resume and then just send that out to everybody. We don't do that anymore. What we do is we tailor your resume towards the job. Now, you don't have to recreate and reinvent the wheel every single time you're applying for a position. But what I want you to do is I want you to have what's called the original resume. So you're going to keep that saved as original. Then let's say that you are going to apply at ABC Supply. I want you to take the original resume, take some of the wording off of the ABC Supply job description, the skills that you have, and put that on your resume. Make sure that I can figure out very easily and very quickly by looking at your resume that you qualify for the job that you're going to be applying for with me. I only want you to go back 10 to 15 years and write on your resume 10 plus years or 15 plus years. Don't go any farther than 15 years. Now, I've had people who they worked at a position for 30 years and they get very frustrated with me. Like, really, Glory? So I worked there for 30 years. I'm very proud of the fact that I had a job for 30 years. You know what? That is absolutely wonderful. What I say is that if you're that proud of it, which is something to be proud of, then take your resume and frame it and hang it on the wall. But that's not the one that you're going to be sending out. The one I want you to send out is the one that says 15 plus years experience at ABC Supply. Now, you're not going to put the 30 years on there because even though age discrimination is illegal, it happens all the time. Now, if you have 30 years experience on your resume, I want you to think about this. It's very easy for me to figure out that you probably started working around 1920, so you're probably in your 50s. And again, I don't have issue with that. I too am in my 50s. But what I want you to focus on instead is getting the interview. Your resume is only as good as the fact as it gets you the interview. Otherwise, it's not worth anything. So I want you to look at it with fresh eyes. Don't go so far back. I have some people who they're talking about the work they did in 1983. That doesn't apply to today. So I want you to keep some of that information off. Now, I also want to let you know that it's very, very painful to take that information off. But if it doesn't apply, and don't have it on your resume. Now, I'm going to give you a really simple example. So previous to working with the state of Minnesota, I was operations manager of a nonprofit. Now, in that role, I did a lot of hiring people and a lot of looking at resumes. So I was looking at a resume one time, and this gentleman could do everything under the sun with a forklift. I mean, he was super, super talented with the forklift, but we didn't own a forklift. So I never interviewed him. And the reason was because according to his resume, I assumed that he would go take that forklift job because my little retail position probably wasn't as paying as much as a forklift position would. Now, did I know that? Absolutely not. My point out of this story is that make sure that you are going after the job description so that your resume is actually looking like to the employer that that's the only job you're applying for. And the only way you can do that is by really tailoring that resume towards the job. I also want you to ask yourself, do I have the competitive skills needed to get this job? If I don't, reach out to us because we have the dislocated worker program. There's a lot of different funding within the different counties that we can help you to maybe get a certificate if you need that certificate. But ask yourself, do I have the competitive skills? Do I want this job? You know, a lot of times we're fighting over a job or very disappointed we didn't hear back from a company when we really didn't do our research and come to find out the job wasn't anything like you thought it was going to be. How you can do some of your research and get some insider tips is great one is go on LinkedIn. Check it out and see what LinkedIn is talking about. See if they've got some reviews from the employers, or excuse me, the employees. I said the wrong word. From the employees that are already working there. Find the jobs that no one has posted. I love this one, and I'm going to give you a suggestion on how to do this. It also says create relationships so that they will think of you first if something does come up. So when I was the operations manager of the nonprofit, another piece of my position was to schedule and work with the volunteers. We had many, many, many volunteers. They were a big, big piece of the organization to help run it. Now, here's what would happen. If you were volunteering with me, and I could trust you because I know I can trust you because you're showing up on time, you're doing the tasks that I'm asking you to help with, you're nice and get along well with other people. What also would happen at this nonprofit is I would have business owners stop in and they would either be giving a donation or just checking to see how things are going, seeing if we needed anything. And in addition, they would say to me, Glory, I have a position open. Do you know of anybody that's looking for a job? Well, because you were volunteering with me, I would very easily say, yes, I do, and here's the person, and I would highly recommend them. So you can also get a recommendation from me because I know that you are a good volunteer. Now, I want to suggest to you that yes, keep on looking for a job, but I also want to suggest maybe putting in just a couple hours a week in a volunteer position because it is getting you back into the community and it may be that networking piece that you would need to actually find the job. But then in addition to that, we all feel good when we start to give back to our community. Even if you are hurting for money, it's incredible how once you start to give your time, how things come back to you very quickly. So keep that in mind that that's just one more way to be able to network very well. So let's talk a little bit about some good news. Good news
Glory, before you
is
go on,
yes,
can you take a few questions?
yes, I can.
Okay, this would probably be a good time for him.
Perfect.
First of all, I just saw several comments about people having several good interviews and they don't get hired or no follow-up. Do you have any advice on what to do after that when you have interviews and you don't hear anything back?
Yes, so you guys, I'm really sorry that that's happening. When we are working with employers, I'm telling them, can't you at the very least send out a email that says, thank you for applying, thank you for interviewing, we filled the position. Many employers don't do that. So one of the ways that I found that you can overcome it is that you could send a follow-up email or give them a phone call. However they notified you about the interview would be a great way to respond back to them and just ask them, hi. If I was calling, I would say, hi, this is Glory Mitchell, and I interviewed with you on July 31st. I was just wondering if you guys have made any decisions. I just want to let you know that I really believe I'm the best person for the job, and I'm excited to hear from you. You can reach me at, and then leave my phone number. So that is one way, but please don't get discouraged if you don't hear back at all. There's a lot of employers that are doing that and it's just not right, but it's the truth. Okay.
And Glory, what's your recommendation if you're in an interview and they ask you if you've applied to other companies or institutions? How should you answer that?
Boy, I tell you what, that's a really, it makes you wonder why in the world they're asking that, doesn't it? So I guess that if I was asked, Gloria, have you been applying at other institutions or other, for other positions? I would say yes. Yes, I have been applying. But you know what? Out of all the different places that I've interviewed, this is exactly where I want to be, is to come to work with you. And it has brought me here to you today. So you want to be truthful. And I don't know, all of us, when we're looking for a job, we aren't just usually typically just applying at one place. But I don't like that they're even asking that question because really, what does that have to do with anything other than I think there might be being just curious or nosy? What do you think of that, Sheila?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I mean, you can just, say that you're still in the job search process. I don't know that you have to be real specific as to if you have applied other places.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And then Glory, you made the comment about not going past 15 years on your resume, just saying like 15 plus years or 10 plus. And we have a lot of comments and questions about, how do we list that if our experience is 15 years in the same industry or with the same company, like 25 years? Do you still recommend just saying 10 or 15 plus years and not using dates?
Yes. Yes, I absolutely do. Now, here's the thing. You need to look at your resume is that it is what is getting you the interview. Once you're at the interview, then now you're a real live person. I can't just throw you away like I can that resume or that piece of paper that you just gave me. Uh, Also, now you've got the opportunity to convince me why you are the best person for the job. A lot of times it's difficult to interview very well, so please reach out to us because we're experts at helping you with doing a mock interview. But you need to look at your resume as it is going to be the only first introduction of who I am and the only piece of paper or online platform that's going to get me to the interview. If it doesn't get you to the interview, it's not of any value. And like I say, it's painful taking some of this stuff off, meaning the years, or, sometimes people will put on there, their degree and the year they graduated. I don't need to know the year you graduated anymore unless they're asking for it on the application. But now the application is different than the resume. Okay, so we're talking about the resume.
Okay, one more, Gloria, before you go on.
Okay.
You mentioned, if you don't hear back, to follow up with them. When you follow up, is it okay to ask what you did wrong in the interview for future use?
Well, I think that is a really great idea and a great suggestion, but you're not going to get an answer from them. I think that it is so I do the interview workshop as well, and we have on there a little note about try to get some feedback from the person who interviewed you. I can't explain to you what it is, but nowadays people are so scared to give feedback. They're so scared to offend people. So I don't know that you're going to get any feedback. I think it's a great idea to ask. Do you have any feedback? I wouldn't say what I did wrong. Instead, I would say do you have any feedback on how I interviewed? Or is there any suggestions you would have that I could actually do better next time? And if you do make that phone call, I also want you to make sure that you're saying, I really want to work for this company. So I just wanted to know, are you going to keep my application on file for a while in case that you hire? Don't burn your bridges and say stuff like, well, I didn't want this job anyways. So instead, you're going to keep that door open. But again, don't get your feelings hurt if you don't hear back from them, because it's very frustrating that they don't always let you know. Don't take it personal. So let's talk a little more about teleconferencing. So the good news is that you're doing it right now. But I also want to talk to you about how important it is to do a mock interview with us if you have not done a virtual interview before. So there is setting up your background. So you can see my background. This is a calendar. I would not necessarily have this in my background if I was going to be interviewing. I don't know that I would wear this shirt because it's kind of more of a lot of busy print. You want to make sure that the person is paying attention to you as opposed to your background, or anything else. If you have a scarf or big earrings or, any other type of distraction, make sure your lighting is good. I have worked with people who it's too dark in the room when we're doing the mock interview, so that it looks like you're hiding something, or it's too bright so that it washes you out, or they'll have their background set on blurred, or you can have your background set on where you look like you're in Paris right now. I don't recommend that you use any of those additional backgrounds, and the reason for it is because, for lack of a better term, I call it trailing. So if I move my head this way, there's light that trails behind me, or it'll actually cut half of my face off. I've had that happen before. So make sure that your background is set up appropriately. Dress as if you would face to face. I just heard recently that there was a person who interviewed virtually, and the interviewer asked them to stand up to make sure they were fully dressed. Isn't that interesting? Now, I don't know if I would agree with that necessarily, but I'm telling you, it happened. Make sure that you are carrying good eye contact and that you smile. Now, the good eye contact piece is you need to know where your camera is on your computer, or whether it be a webcam. I also want to let you know that if you don't have the equipment to do a virtual interview, please get a hold of us and come on down to the Career Force. You can use our equipment. Works really well. But I know where the camera is. So you can see that if I am speaking to you this way by not carrying any eye contact, that feels a lot different than if I'm looking at you. So I know exactly where my camera is, and you don't need to actually stare at it continuously. That's creepy. But you can look at it and then look away and continue to look at it. And when I'm speaking to you, I want to make sure that I'm carrying good eye contact with you. Make sure your audio is good. We did a sound check before we started this workshop. Want to make sure that you can hear me well. There's nothing more frustrating than speaking and you're only catching every other word because my audio isn't good. And then have a backup phone number handy. So how this works, let's say that I'm calling and I say, I would like to interview you tomorrow. We're going to do it virtually. Are you okay with that? And you don't have equipment. I don't want you to tell me, I don't have equipment. I want you to say, absolutely, I'm okay with it. What time would you like me to come in for the interview? Well, we'd like to interview you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And you're going to hang up the phone and you're going to get a hold of us immediately so that you can get it set up to come into the Career Force tomorrow morning by 8:30. We're going to test your equipment, make sure that your lighting and everything is ready to go. But when they're calling you for the interview, I also want you to ask for a backup phone number. Let me tell you why this is so important. In the event that something goes wrong, you know as well as I do that when we're dealing with technology, there's always something that can happen where maybe the internet went down, maybe the audio isn't working. With this backup phone number, I want you to be able to call the person. You guys, I really had this happen. So I had a guy come in, he used our equipment. We made sure everything was perfect, right? Interview started at 10 o'clock. Right at 10 o'clock, I walked by and I saw, yep, he's in there talking. So I'm, all things are good and ready to go. All of a sudden, he comes busting out of the interview room and he's like, Glory, Glory, I have problems. So the internet went down. The internet has never gone down since then. It's crazy how that works, right? But I said, okay, first off, take a deep breath. He said, did you get the backup phone number? He said, yes, I did. I said, I want you to call them back and I want you to realize that this happens in life. So show them that you can handle stressful situation and that you can handle it very well. Use this to be part of the interview because really it is part of the interview. And you know that he did handle it really well and he ended up getting the job. He got hired because of the fact that he could show them that he worked well under stressful situations. Again, some of this stuff, we might not have it planned, but it happens for a reason so that we can get the job. So, how do you feel about looking for employment now? And do those feelings show? I work with a lot of people who they ended up leaving the job because it was a toxic environment. Well, when they're interviewing, they're bringing that story to the new interview. That is not appropriate. Do your feelings show on how you were treated at your last job? If it was great, wonderful. But if things went off the rails, are you discussing that at the new interview? You've gained skills since the last time you interviewed, but do you know what they are? They say the average person has 600 to 800 skills, but if I were to actually drill down on you right now, you could probably only list 5 to 10 of them. Isn't that fascinating? I believe the reason for that is because we don't typically talk that way. I don't walk up to you and say, "Hi, I'm Glory Mitchell," and these the interviews when you must talk that way. So don't be the forklift driver if I'm not looking for a forklift driver, but I want you to come in and interview and stay within the job description of what I'm looking for. So when I ask you, tell me about yourself, you don't say, well, I was born in so and so, I have this many children, I've been married. I want you to tell me how you're going to be the best fit for the job and give yourself permission to say 3 things. So tell me about yourself. I want you to tell me 3 skills that I'm looking for that I can apply when I hire you and know that you can do them. What makes you a better candidate today than you were the last time? You want to be able to think about that for a moment so that you can answer it at the interview. And then what are your goals? A lot of times they will ask you, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And do you know what you say to me? Well, I see myself retired. Just get me a job, man. Yeah, I just need a couple more years and I'm out of here. Well, you're not going to get hired. You're not going to get hired if if that is your answer. When they say, what are your career aspirations or where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? I want you to say, I see myself working for you and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. Now, it's easy to say, yeah, but Gloria, I plan on retiring in 3 to 5 years. Well, you know what? That's absolutely wonderful, but I need to tell you something. I had talked to people every day who they planned on retiring, but it didn't work out the way they thought it would. Or let's take it a step further. After the pandemic happened, a lot of people were at home with their loved ones locked in place, in shelter in place, and found out that they did not like it. It was not what they thought it was going to be. So many of the clients that I work with are 70, 80 years old and looking for a part-time job or a full-time job because they can't stand being at home day in, day out. They got all their little projects done within a month's time. Now they want to go back into work. So, like I say, you might have plans to retire, but for the interview's sake, And for your resume, you are going to say, I plan on working here with you, and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. Let's talk now about being seen as overqualified. So I have a lot of people will say to me, yeah, well, Glory, they said that they weren't going to hire me because I was overqualified. If they're saying that you are overqualified, I believe the reason for that is because you have too much information on your resume that does not apply to the job. So again, are you being the forklift driver when they don't own a forklift? I have a lot of people, goodness sakes, this is difficult. So they might be, I'll give you a real good example. I have many executive people call me and they're like, Lori, I've been executive my whole career. I'm so tired of being in charge. I just really would like to get a job where I'm going to go work at a greenhouse. But if I were to show them my resume right now, there's no way they're going to interview me to go work at a greenhouse. So what do I do? All right, well, first off, we're going to tailor that resume towards exactly what the greenhouse is looking for. And we're going to take all of the other executive stuff off. So if you were a vice president at the previous company, but now you want to work at a greenhouse, you're not going to have the tagline vice president even on your resume. Because think about it. If I'm looking at your resume and I'm hiring for a greenhouse, I'm not going to even interview you because I'm going to think, what in the world are you doing applying here? You're clearly overqualified. And as soon as you get an executive position, you'll bail on my greenhouse position and go work for the other company. So do you see how you don't want to portray yourself that way because you won't get the interview? Losing momentum. Boy, I talked to a lot of people who are like, Lori, I've been sending my resume out to everyone and I'm not hearing anything from anybody. I have not gotten an interview. Please reach out to us and let us take a look at your resume. It could be where you just need to do a little bit of adjusting and you'll start getting those interviews. But we're experts at this. We do this day in, day out. So let us help you. How about your narrative? Is your narrative negative? Are you coming to the job interview and telling me how terrible it was at the last place you were working? Do you know what I'm thinking when I'm interviewing you? Or what the employer, more importantly, what the employer is thinking when they're interviewing you? They're thinking to themselves, goodness, what are you going to say about us if you don't work out here? So please do not talk negative about your previous employer. And again, reach out to us because we can help you with some of those comebacks on what you say if they ask you, why did you leave your last job? There's something I want to point out here, though. I want to let you know that not all employers are even asking that question anymore. Why did you leave your last job? Isn't that interesting? Now, I asked the employers, why don't you ask that question anymore? Just out of plain curiosity. And they told me, we don't want to know. In addition to that, we need your help so bad, we don't want to know. A lot of times when we'd ask that question, people would give us way too much information and they talk themselves out of the job. Isn't that interesting? How about not updating your skills? Again, a lot of this, you have been updating your skills. You're just not recognizing them as skills. So let us help you with that as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about being seen as overqualified, okay? You're listing too many accomplishments or unrelated accomplishments. And again, you want to be able to say the job description, what job description is looking for, both on your resume and while you're interviewing. How about how are you talking? I always say that the good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So are you listening? How about this one? Are you behaving like you did when you were in charge? A great comeback at the interview if you are asked, well, Gloria, I'm looking at your resume and it looks to me like you've got some supervisor position experience. It looks to me like you have some supervisory experience in your past. Are you going to be okay with coming to work and not being in a supervisory role? Now, again, I don't know that I would even have that on my resume, the title supervisor position. But if I do, would want to be able to say, you know what, One of my skills is that yes, I'm a natural born leader, but I also really admire my supervisors. And in addition to that, I can follow really well too. More importantly, I will do the job exactly the way you want it done. A lot of people that are seasoned, they will dig their heels in, cross their arms, and say, "Oh no, that's not the way I was taught how to do it," or "I'm not doing it that way because that's wrong." Now, I want to challenge you. What do you care? Do the job as long as it's not illegal. Do the job the way the employer is asking you to do it. Now, I also have told people that many times you might have a better idea, but you want to first go in and work for a while. It could be even up to 6 months before you start throwing out your ideas because you want to see one, if it's going to be a good fit for you, but then also they're determining whether you're a good fit for them. Build up that respect. Show up on time. Be an excellent worker. Be flexible. Get along with people. Once you have earned that, now you can turn around and say, I've got an idea that I think that we might want to consider on how we can do this better. Now you've got their attention and they're going to listen to you, but you had to put your time in first. Losing momentum. Boy, I'll tell you what, this is such a common problem when you are looking for a job. So, you start in the beginning, you're like, yes, I got this. I'm going to start every day. I'm going to put out 5 applications, 5 resumes. Boy, I'm going to really run with this. Goodness, by the end of the week, you don't hear anything. You've been doing that, and it's easy to get discouraged. Please don't sit at home and suffer. There's no reason for you to stay in that space of discouragement. I want you to reach out to us and let us give you that encouraging word. Let us walk you through some different ideas on some resources. Give you some ideas on how you can keep that momentum going. But know that it is common to lose momentum. That's why we bring this up, because a lot of people get stuck in that this is only happening to me. I'm the only one who feels this way and I am never going to get a job. Well, I'm here to tell you straight up, that's a lie. Stop talking to yourself that way. Instead, reach out to us and let us help you to get that momentum back if you feel like you're losing it. Letting your narrative be negative. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think that I just skipped over a slide here, so let me go back. I think I got to do it one more time. Yes. Some reason I want to talk now about how to update your skills. But you know what, Sheila? I was just wanted to check in and see if we had any questions.
We have lots of questions for you, Glory.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. This one came up a couple times. What if you're trying to switch careers, but you don't have any experience in the new career? Like all your experience that you had in the past doesn't relate to what you want to do now.
Yes, you know what? That happens to many of us. So one, they call that career progression. 2, I want you to reach out to us because my guess is that a lot of the skills that you have, we call that transferring your skills into the new position. So maybe some of those skills that you had at your previous position can transfer into that new role. You're just not looking at it like that. So again, let us help you because you probably do have skills in that new position that you want to go for. It just needs to be reworded.
Yeah, and I had commented that using the combination resume where you can pick out those transferable skills related to that job and put them at the top of your resume would be beneficial.
Yes, I love that.
And then there's a question you had mentioned, Glory, that sometimes people don't want to work in the same higher level position. They want something a little less stressful, not as demanding. So if you don't list that high level job title on your resume, what would that look like? Like how would you put that on there then?
So, let's say that you guys, I really had this happen just recently. So there's a gentleman who he was a vice president and of the previous company, and he was done with being vice president. He didn't want that executive role anymore. He actually wanted to go into sales. So what we did was first off, we took off vice president And I talked to him. I said, okay, so when you were vice president, what were you actually doing? So I did a lot of customer service, a lot of payroll, a lot of working with the employees. All right. So what we did was we handpicked out, we his job title was customer service because he really was doing customer service. And then we handpicked everything off of that original resume to put it on the resume that he was applying for the customer service position. So that's part of the reason why you want to reach out to us and let us help you transfer some of these skills. Because when he first started, he was sending out the resume that had vice president on there and he was not getting any interviews. Nobody was even responding to him. And I sincerely believe the reason is because they're like, well, if you're vice president, why would you want to come work here? So he wasn't even getting the interview and given the chance to explain why he wanted to work there because his resume was portraying something that he didn't want to continue to stay in.
Okay, we'll do one more question before you go on.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on interviews that are done by email?
Oof. Boy, that's a really good question. I got to tell you, I've never had an interview done by email. So I guess let's just kind of play this through. First off, I would love to have an interview done by email. And here's the reason why. I can think for a moment on how to answer. You know, a lot of the times when we're doing interviews, we've got to be Johnny on the spot. I mean, we have to know the answers and we have to be able to talk about them very freely and very quickly. Um, so if you are getting an email interview, you have the right to look up the answers even. Um, but I have never experienced that. So I guess I would like to know some more information on what kind of questions they're asking you during that email interview, because that is really fascinating and something new that I haven't heard of. Okay, so let's talk about not updating your skills. I briefly have touched base on the Dislocated Worker Program. So that is one of the programs that are run through the Career Force with other partners. Want you to reach out and ask your local career force if you would qualify for the Dislocated Worker Program. Another way to update your skills is some of these online platforms. One of them that we recommend is Coursera. Coursera is an excellent online platform, or let's say that you wanted to get a certificate in Microsoft Word. You can go on Coursera and for free get that certificate. Now, the only thing I want to put out there is that with Coursera, you have to be careful because there's a pop-up box that comes up all the time and they're asking you to pay $49 a month for a fee. And that would be for a membership fee. We don't recommend that you do that. So be careful when you're in Coursera on the boxes that you're clicking so that you're not signing up for the monthly fee. But check out the free classes. I know they give a certificate in Excel. There's a lot of different free certificates, one in Google that you can get that may be helpful for updating your skills. So Sheila, it looks to me like this is my favorite time of the workshop. We're going to open it up for questions. You know, another thing that I want you guys to take a look at is LinkedIn, but then also Sheila, if you wouldn't mind putting in GCF Learning, that website. I think it's gcflearnfree.org. If you don't mind putting that into the chat. And then let's see there. Oh, another one that is really good is careeronestop.org. Wait, no, can't remember if that's .org or .net. I think it's .net, careeronestop.net. The great thing about Career One Stop is that I have a lot of people that I work with and they're like, well, I don't know what the pay range is for this company. So what I want you to do is I want you to go on Career One Stop and you can find out pay ranges for different industries. It's pretty awesome. Then one other one that I'd like for you to put in, Sheila, is just our Career Force MN. So if you haven't been on our Career Force MN page, I want you to take a look at that page as well. There are assessments on there. You know, I have a lot of people who I work with who they've been in an industry for a long time. They want to get into something else, but they don't know for sure what. You can do some of those assessments and they can really help you with trying to figure out where to go from the spot that you're at now. So I'm hoping that we've got some more questions, Sheila. Looks to me like it's 10 to 11. So we got 10 minutes to
You do have more questions, Glory.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's see here. So someone is saying that if you know the position that you're applying for doesn't have any promotional opportunities, is it okay to say that you will exceed all of their expectations?
Yeah, I guess I don't see anything wrong with that. And you're gonna, say that in answering one of their questions. Um, so of course, if they say, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? If there isn't any promotional advantages, or if you are already at the top, you're promoted as high as you can go. Um, you can say something like, I see myself still working here and growing with the company. Because even if most roles don't become stagnant. So you want to be able to grow with the company.
Okay. Here's a question about transitioning out of a field that's in a hiring freeze. Do new certificates really matter if you don't have any actual experience? And is it worth paying for them?
So, you know what? I would say the only time that they matter is if they apply to that new job that you are applying for. Now, I also want to remind you that there are certain roles out there that you're going to get the certificate hired. And term is when you're reading the job description, it says must get certificate within first 6 months of being hired or within first year. So then of course I wouldn't recommend that you go out and pay out of your own pocket to get that certificate before your first day of hire. But I do recommend that there are a lot of times if that job description says something on that order, I would have on my resume ability to get a certificate in CPR training within my first 3 months of hire, or I would actually have that specifically on my resume if it says that I need to have some type of requirement or certificate in order to keep the job.
And then, Glory, there was a comment about, since this is a workshop on job search over 50, at our age, isn't it a given that we have more than 15 years experience?
Well, sure it is. Absolutely. But the deal is remember your resume is only as good as the fact that it gets you the interview. If it's not getting you the interview, then we need to do something to adjust it. So I've had people say to me before, well, I'm still going back the 30 years. Well, we live in a free country. You can do whatever you want in regards to your resume, but I'm telling you what works. And the deal is if you go any farther back, it seems in 15 years, you're not getting the interviews because people are thinking, well, you must be older, and I'm not going to hire someone who I'm going to put all this time and effort into training them, teaching them how to do the job, knowing that they're going to retire within 2 years. So you want to be able to overcome that and get the interview. No, I can tell you why I'm the best person for the job because I'm there in real life. And you can't just throw me away anymore like you could my resume.
And Glory, do you have any recommendations on how many applications a person should do per week?
Well, I am all about applying for everything that you're interested in. So recommendations, I would say for sure 5 a week. But it all depends on where you're at. So sometimes when I say 5 a week, that's very overwhelming to people who they've been doing that for a while now and they're not getting any responses. What I want to point out here is that if you have already applied for 5 jobs and they haven't called you back for an interview, stop. You need to have us take a look at your resume and let us teach you how to tailor it towards that job instead of wasting all those golden opportunities because your resume isn't tailored towards the position.
How many skills should you put on a resume? And I don't know if this would be like skill categories or, how many skills under each business or employer that you list.
So I am a strong believer that you put all the skills that the employer is looking for. So whatever that job description says, that is what, if you've got those skills, you're going to make sure all of them are on your resume. Now, Sheila had mentioned the combination resume, which that's my favorite resume, but again, you can pick whichever one you feel comfortable with. But with the combination resume, what it also does is it has your work company's name, work history down at the bottom. So it has ABC Supply, it has the town ABC Supply was located in, and the years that I worked there from, I'm just making this up, 2015 to 2024. Okay. Now, I can write all my skills up above, my skills and my experience, but I'm not tying it directly to that job. That's why I love the combination resume as well, because I can tell you all the skills you're looking for, but I'm not necessarily listing that I did that at this job, which that is what the chronological resume does, is it kind of ties you to where you learn that skill from. If you say that you know how to do this skill and I want to know where you learned it, I'm going to ask you at the interview. But again, now you're at the interview and we can have a conversation about it, as opposed to the person looking at your resume and saying, nope, they didn't even read the job description. They clearly don't want a job here. They're probably just throwing out resumes for their unemployment requirements. I've had employers say that to me before. So.
Okay, and then what if you have done research about the company before going into the interview and the interviewers don't know what you're talking about, like the information that you found?
Boy.
Should you use that information to let them know that you've at least researched the company?
So you know what? That is a genius question. Let me tell you how you overcome that. So you want to make sure that any questions that you may have that the interviewer audience, so it could be a panel, could be 5 people interviewing you, could be one person. You want to make sure that any of your questions that you ask that that panel or that interviewer would know the answer. Let me give you a good example. So I had a person who was being interviewed by Human Resources, and the question that she asked Human Resources was, can you tell me what a typical day would look like in this role? Now, I think that's a great question, but the human resource person didn't know the answer to that because she actually did not know the role of a typical day in that role. So I want you to be very, very careful to only ask questions that your audience or your interviewer will be able to answer. Now, that's kind of tough to tell as you're being interviewed. But if you end up getting in a situation where you seem to know more about the company than the interviewer, you need to stop with what you're saying because you're indirectly making that person look like they don't know their job when that is not your intent. But you might not get hired just based off of that. So again, know your audience before you're asking some of these questions at the interview.
Okay, and I'm not quite sure. They're saying that if we use, who can we use as our manager, supervisor, or boss for professional references if they were already listed on the employment history part of the application?
That's a great question. So first off, when I was calling on your references, I never wanted to talk to your supervisor or your boss because legally they can only tell me the day you started, the day you quit, and would they hire you again. So use your supervisors if they're asking for supervisors, but I want you to have 3 professional references who are not your supervisors. Now, they could be a work colleague, they could be actually someone who knows you professionally, but you might not have necessarily worked with them. But they're people that I can call freely as an employer and talk with them and get a good reference and find out about your work ethics, your integrity, and all of the information that matters to me where that person can speak freely with me. So you actually only need 3 good professional references, and then keep your supervisors. Now, if you are using your supervisors as your references, that's fine, but you're probably going to want to get 3 more. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. Sheila,
And
I
then,
think we have got time for one more question.
okay. Do you have any suggestions for tailoring a resume for public sector positions like with the state or county versus the private sector?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you want to apply with the state of Minnesota, which Sheila, I'm going to have you put that into the chat as well. We come to work with us. We have a lot of positions that are open. So that would be the mn.gov/MMB careers website. If you are applying for the state of Minnesota, I want you to reach out to us before you turn that application and your resume in, because we are going to email you a tips to apply for the state of Minnesota. That's a whole different way of applying than what I've been teaching you up to this point. Just because you got to put a little bit more information in there. So reach out to us if you do want to apply. In regards to county and that gets back to tailoring your resume towards that job. So you guys, I hope that the most important part that you have gotten out of this workshop, you're going to read that job description and you're going to tailor your resume towards the job you are applying for. You're only going to go maximum of 15 years back, and you're not going to go any farther back. And when in doubt, reach out to us. We're here to help you, and we can walk you through a lot of this information. Your resume is only as good as the fact that it gets you the interview. So remember that. We're here to help. It's 11 o'clock sharp, so bless you for attending. And we're looking forward to seeing you in the working world. So keep on doing what you're doing, and let us know how we can help.